Experience it on Fox Sports 2.
For years, the fans in Orlando, Florida have begged for the UFC to come to their home city, and finally, we are here with a huge card of the UFC on Fox, and it is highlighted by a heavyweight #1 contender bout between this man, #2 ranked in the world, Fabricio Werdum, as he takes on his younger challenger, the almighty bearded one, Travis Browne, #3 ranked in the world. This is the Fox UFC Saturday weigh-in, and it starts right now. You're looking live inside the arena here in Orlando, Florida. Again, the biggest card the UFC on Fox has ever given you from start to finish, and I'm so glad to be a part of it once again. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jay Glazer, joined by my man, Chael P. Sonnen, and of course, Brian Stanton. Guys, from start to finish, this card is loaded. We have, obviously the women, Miesha Tate, Carmouche, Donald Cerrone fighting, and again, that heavyweight bout.
All right, you talk about the heavyweight bout, you're talking about the main event, and guys, there is no bigger prize in all of combat sports than the World Heavyweight Championship. But before you get there, you must establish the #1 contender, and the winner of Werdum versus Browne tomorrow night not only will fill that spot, but they will unequivocally become the biggest threat Cain Velasquez has ever seen.
It's an incredible main course, but boy, do we have some appetizers for you folks. Look, Miesha Tate, Liz Carmouche both have challenged for the title. Top 10 ladies. Miesha Tate's never been a boring fight in her life. Edson Barboza, Cowboy Cerrone. Come on, people are loving that fight. Two of the very best strikers, not only in the lightweight division, but in the entire UFC. Top to bottom, even the undercard's incredible.
And Miesha Tate, only woman to last outside the first round with the one and only Ronda Rousey. But again, we're going to highlight the main event here. We're going to start it off with Fabricio Werdum, perhaps the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner in the history of the heavyweight division.
Yeah, Jay, and Fabricio Werdum is so good, you don't have to listen to me. Go ahead and take his word for it, because he'll let you know. As a matter of fact, he has recently claimed that he worked out with Travis Browne before, strictly on the ground in jiu-jitsu, and he says he dominated him. Fabricio Werdum is the guy who submitted Fedor Emelianenko when people thought that was unheard of.
Well, and Travis Browne came right back and said that training session was 4.5 years ago. I only started this sport a little over 5 years ago. This man is an incredible athlete, former basketball player, 6'6". But look how rapidly he has improved. A year ago, he was a prospect. 1 year later, contender, coming up 3 straight first-round knockouts. This man generates power in some of the most awkward positions we've ever seen in the heavyweight division. He's a dynamo.
Yeah, he is a rising star, absolutely, and he's going against a very experienced fighter in Fabricio Werdum. He is 3-0 since returning to the UFC, but Werdum was the default challenger for Cain Velasquez heavyweight belt. With the champ on the sidelines and Travis Browne's incredible streak of knockouts, the stage is now set for an epic showdown here in Central Florida. For more on that, we toss it now downstairs to our own Ariel Helwani.
Guys, as you may know, there's that old saying, all roads lead to Rome. Well, for this weekend, I'm switching it to all roads lead to Orlando, because both Travis Browne and Fabricio Werdum have taken 2 different yet interesting paths to get to this point. Consider this. Just 7 days before Fabricio Werdum shocked the world and submitted Fedor Emelianenko back in 2010, Travis Browne was quietly making his UFC debut on an undercard in Las Vegas. A few days before that, he had his truck repossessed. That's how bleak things were for the former collegiate basketball player. And then when he fought Czech Congo to a draw just a few months later, he only had $100 to his name, and he felt embarrassed. He remembers telling a friend that he would never let this happen again because he couldn't buy his kids Christmas presents that year. Now, what people forget when they talk about Fabricio Werdum, that back in 2008, this was a guy that was actually released by the UFC when he lost to an unknown Brazilian named Junior Dos Santos. Since then, he's 6-1. Since that draw to Czech Congo, Travis Browne is also 6-1. Both two very different paths, but somewhat the same. And now here they are on network television, about to fight for the chance to fight for the UFC heavyweight title. As I said at the top, all roads lead to Orlando.
And the biggest fight of both of their careers. Thanks, Ariel. Now keep it locked in right here, because when we come back, Werdum, Browne, Miesha Tate, Carmouche, and the rest of the fighters, they step up to the scale. This is the Fox UFC Saturday weigh-in right here on Fox Sports 2. There are our main event competitors, Werdum and Travis Browne, both men trying to stop the other's momentum and punch their ticket to a shot at UFC Gold, which leads us right to our online poll question for the day. Which fight from the Fox UFC Saturday main card are you looking forward to the most? Head on to foxsports.com/connect live to vote for Werdum versus Browne, Tate versus Carmouche, or CERRONE versus Barboza. We'll have the results later on in the show. Welcome back again to Orlando, Florida. We're going 4 wide now here. Glazer, Son, and Stan. Ariel Helwani, glad to have you up here with us. But guys, it is time now for the fighters to go and try and make weight. With that, we toss it down to Joe Rogan.
What's happening, Orlando? Welcome to the weigh-ins. Ariani and Chrissy, ladies and gentlemen. Dana White, without him, none of this would be possible. Joe Silva, best matchmaker on the planet Earth. Bruce Buffer, the voice of the Octagon, and Burt Watson, babysitter to the stars. Hi, Mike Goldberg. All right, we got a banging card for you, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to kick things off in the heavyweight division. Live on UFC Fight Pass, Derek Lewis versus Jack May.
Wednesday. Wednesday of the all-new season, The Ultimate Fighter continues its familiar foes coach, the next generation of UFC fighters. The Ultimate Fighter, Team Edgar versus Team Penn, continues Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Sports 1, streaming live on Fox Sports Go.
First up on the scale, Jack May.
$252 and a half.
252 and a half. And his opponent, Derek Lewis.
Guys, this is a battle of a former college basketball player against a former AAA truck driver. Now that is Derek Lewis. They call him the Black Beast. He has 8 KOs and 9 wins, and actually has a KO on the regional scene against Jared Rosholt, who's been doing pretty well in the UFC as of late. He said about this matchup, quote, "He's not my toughest fight, but I'm his." A lot of confidence making his UFC debut. Actually was supposed to make his UFC debut several months ago, was injured, had to wait, but you know, it's tough to find prospects at heavyweight. We'll see how he does.
$256 from Mr. Lewis. First fight of the night, ladies and gentlemen, live on UFC Fight Pass, Derek Lewis and Jack May. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. BEKTIC versus SKELLY.
SKELLY is known as the skyscraper. Guys, he's 5'11", which isn't terribly uncommon, but it is for this weight class of 145 pounds. Look, this guy was an All-American wrestler in the NAIA division. He's got an 11-0 record, 6 wins by submission.
145 from Mr. SKELLY.
Fox Sports 1 is the place serious sports fans turn before every slam, every goal, and every game with America's pregame weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Sports 1 and streaming live on Fox Sports Go.
Big prospect right there, guys. 7-0, trains at ATT. A lot of people very high on Mirsad.
SKELLY and BEKTIC. The next fight takes place in the flyweight division. Dustin ORTIZ versus BORG.
Tomorrow's doubleheader action on FS1 as Mike Trout and the Angels take on reigning AL MVP Miguel Cabrera and the Tigers. Then the Diamondbacks square off against Yasiel Puig and the Dodgers. All begins 12:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1, streaming live on Fox Sports Go.
125 and a half from Mr. BORG. And his opponent, Dustin ORTIZ.
Been an interesting road for Ortiz. He was supposed to fight a week ago at Ultimate Fight Night 39 in Abu Dhabi. His opponent pulls out a week before the fight. So he's not only had to extend his weight cut an additional 10 days, but also his training camp. When you're talking about peaking at this level, that could be a very interesting thing to do. And he gets a short notice opponent in BORG, who's coming off a huge win in the regional circuit over a guy named Nick Ursa, who I've trained with, who's very good. So BORG is no slouch. Should be a really good fight tomorrow night.
125 and a half.
125 and a half from Mr. ORTIZ. BORG and Dustin ORTIZ.
Once again, Glazers, Son and Stan and Helwani here at the Fox Sports Desk. To tell you what, great atmosphere here for a weigh-in in Orlando. We want to remind you also vote in our online poll. Which fight from the main card are you looking forward to the most? Head on to foxsports.com/connect live to vote. Now I want to send it back to Joe Rogan as we get ready for our Fox Sports 1 prelim fighters. And another reminder, the most exciting network card in UFC history goes down tomorrow, featuring heavyweight contenders Werdum, Travis Browne, Carmouche taking on Miesha Tate, and CERRONE battles Barboza. Our Fox UFC Saturday action starts tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, with the live prelims on Fox Sports 1. Then turn it over to Fox, 8 p.m. for the main card.
Former Shudo champion right there, guys. He's won his last 7 in a row. 28 years old, been waiting a while to get to the UFC.
$170.5 from Mr. Perpetuo. And his opponent, Jordan Young Gun Min.
You know, guys, it sounds silly to call a 24-year-old a veteran, but that's Jordan Meehan. The guy is 27-9, and he hasn't fought in 364 days. That is by far the longest stretch of his career. Has been battling injuries. Remember, we saw him last April against Matt Browne. Broke his orbital bone in that fight. After that, when he recovered, he tore his MCL and his meniscus, so it's been a long layout, but he actually helped Tyron Woodley train for his last fight against Carlos Condit, so he's been active. Looking forward to seeing him back there tomorrow.
That fight on Fox against Browne.
$170.5. Hernani, Perpetuo, and Jordan Meehan, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we move to the middleweight division. Kyle Magalhaes versus Luke Zakridge.
Luke took a very long road to the octagon. He was actually on Tough, The Ultimate Fighter 7 back in 2008. Injured his back, never fought in the UFC, took 2 years off to recover from his back, then goes on a 3-fight win streak. How did he sustain himself during those 2 years? Opened up a gym in Columbus, Ohio, and Chael, you're familiar with this, he opened up a couple of pizza joints as well. Now he's fresh off 3 victories in a row, and he's taking on this matchup on only a couple weeks' notice. We'll see how he does.
$185.5. $185.5 from Mr. Zakridge. And his opponent, Kyle Magalhaes.
Kyle Magalhaes coming to the scale right now. Guys, let me name drop a little bit because he trains with 2 world champions, Jose Aldo and Renan Barão. He's trained by Andre Pederneiras out there at the very successful team in Brazil. Now, what I find very interesting is when they ask him his favorite techniques, he said it's somewhere between a head kick and an arm bar. And I think the message there is saying he likes to do a little bit of everything. He's coming off of a 2-fight win streak. However, he did lose his debut. I think he had a little bit of octagon jitters against Buddy Roberts, but those seem to have worked themselves out.
Also has trained with Machida and Glover Teixeira.
$185.5 for Mr. Magalhaes.
I think he does 6-minute abs, Ariel. I think that's how you get that.
I think it's actually 8. 8 is
that 8 minutes?
Yeah, that's 8.
Zakridge and Kyle Magalhaes, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we move to the featherweight division. Esteban Payan versus Alex White.
Guys, this is the feel-good story of Saturday night when Alex White, who by the way is making his UFC debut tomorrow, was 4 years old. He was on a road trip with his family to Orlando. He, by mistake, drank a jug of gasoline. He thought it was lemonade.
Oh my God.
Drank a jug of gasoline. The doctor said he actually died on his way to the hospital. he survived. They said by 10 p.m. that night he would not survive. He has survived. Went through a lot as a kid. His throat was messed up, was bullied a lot, but has turned into an amazing prospect. All this guy does is win. Listen to this. Over the last 5 years, White has gone 15-0 as an amateur in MMA, 9-0 as a pro, 12-0 as an amateur boxer, and 1-0 as a pro boxer.
Wow.
146.
146 for Mr. White.
You know, you're right. That did make me feel good, Errol. That is a feel-good story. Now, Esteban Paya, this may not make you feel so good, Errol, but this guy's dogged up. Our own Jake Glazer used to train with him out in Arizona. He was with the likes of Ryan Bader, CB Dalloway, Aaron Simpson. When that gym fell apart and those guys left to start something called Power MMA, Esteban is one of the few guys that stayed with the Lawley brothers and continued to train. He's been working towards his goal for some time. We know he's extremely loyal. I don't believe he's ever drank gasoline, Helwani, but he sure does look the part. Look at that physique. He's definitely in great shape.
Also served 3 tours of duty in Iraq as a member of the U.S. Army.
And he's one of those guys, you can beat him up and he just keeps coming and coming and coming back. Very resilient guy.
Alex White and Esteban Paya, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we move to the lightweight division. Jorge Masvidal versus Pat Healy.
All right, here comes Pat Healy. This is my teammate. This is my friend. I've known him from his very first fight in the amateurs where he took on Chris Lieben. And yes, fight fans, the Chris Lieben at 185 pounds. He then moved down to 170 pounds where he fought UFC veterans like Chris Wilson. He fought and beat Paul Daly and Carlos Condit. Now he's at 155.
156.
156 for Bam Bam Healy. And his opponent, Jorge Masvidal.
Jorge Masvidal actually owns a win over Pat Healy's twin brother, Ryan Healy, and Masvidal was quoted as saying, "I beat up his brother, now I'm going to do the same to him." And he also quoted saying that I'm going to be the reason that Pat Healy gets fired from the UFC.
Those are fighting words. He said that?
Absolutely said that.
He's no longer eating brownies for breakfast, guys. He used to do that as a pro fighter, but he said he had to change up his diet recently.
$155.5 for Mr. Masvidal.
He definitely looks leaner than previous fights there. That's a good point about his nutrition.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Bam Bam Healy and Jorge Gamebred Masvidal.
I think that's the best behavior we've ever seen Masvidal in for a weigh-in, guys.
We move to the welterweight division. Thiago Pitbull Alves versus Seth, the Polish Pistola Baczynski.
Yeah, guys, we've been bragging about this card from top to bottom. This is one of the fights that's flying under the radar a little bit. Okay, Seth Baczynski here. He trained at Power MMA, again, with Dalloway, with Bader, with Aaron Simpson. He ended up leaving. Now, he loved the gym. He just thought that those guys were a little bit too big for him. He wanted somebody more his size. So he went out to Alliance MMA in San Diego, which, of course, the former world champion Dominic Cruz is at. He's been getting lots of great training. This guy's very unorthodox. He's long for this weight class, and he uses a lot of elbows and flying knees.
You see Tom Ortiz back there with him also, who was Cain Velasquez's wrestling coach at ASU. He's still with him as well. $70.5.
170.5 for Mr. Baczynski. And his opponent, please welcome back to the UFC, Thiago Alves.
Finally, Thiago Alves is back. The last time this man fought was March 3rd, 2012. How long ago was that? Ronda Rousey wasn't even the Strikeforce champion yet. I wasn't even a father yet. I have 2 kids. I have 2 kids since this man last fought. They call him the bionic pit bull now because he's had 4 surgeries since then. 2 on his chest, 1 on his bicep, 1 on his knee. It has been so long since Thiago Alves has fought, and this division has changed so much since GSP essentially left the sport. This is a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about, and he looks great.
And in case you haven't seen him fight before, he owns 7 knockouts in the welterweight division. That's tied for second. If he gets a knockout tomorrow night, he'll be tied with Matt Browne for first all-time knockouts in the welterweight division.
$170.5 from Mr. Alves.
And you see Mike Dolce sitting back there with him as well. He is part of that physique there for Alves.
Seth Pazinski and Thiago Alves, ladies and gentlemen. And we got a barn burner for you in the lightweight division. Rafael Dos Anjos and Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Nurmagomedov, besides having one of the hardest names pronounced, this young man has the 2nd longest win streak in the UFC. 21 fights. He's second only to our champion, Renan Barão, at 22. He also set a record for most takedowns in a fight against a very good wrestler, Abel Trujillo, who is a monster of a fighter with 21 takedowns in a 3-round fight, Chael. This guy is the guy in this division that nobody wants to fight.
Stay still. 55.5.
155.5 for the Eagle. And his opponent, Rafael Dos Anjos.
Okay, guys, this is just the best story of them all. Rafael Dos Anjos was supposed to fight Rustam Khabilov at UFC 170. He agreed to the fight. He actually thought that he was agreeing to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. He got them mixed up. Unfortunately, Khabilov got injured, and now, at the end of the day, he gets to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov.
55.5.
155.5. Live on Fox Sports 1, ladies and gentlemen, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Rafael Dos Anjos.
Talk about a great fight we have here in our prelims there on Fox Sports 1. Again, before we get you set up for the UFC on Fox main event, want to check in with the results of our online poll so far. Still a few minutes left to vote, so make sure you go to foxsports.com/connect live. Now the opening fight of the main card on Fox. It's a middleweight matchup here between Brad Tavares and Yoel Romero, the Cuban. Romero, he weighs in first. Let's go back down to Joe.
Guys, we're looking at Yoel Romero right here. This is the most decorated, bar none, wrestler in the UFC. Olympic silver medalist, world champion, world bronze medalist. He was an Olympic teammate, different sports, with Hector Lombard out of Cuba. He is now in America. He's at the American top team.
$85.5.
185.5 for Mr. Romero. And his opponent, Brad Tavares.
The Hawaiian has quietly won 5 in a row. If he wins tomorrow, it would be the 2nd longest active streak in the middleweight division, behind the champion, Chris Weidman, who's won 7 in a row. And he was very honest about this fight. You know, after his last one in January, he said he thought he was going to get a big name opponent. Romero kind of disappointed him. He thought he'd get someone maybe in the top 5, top 8, but he shouldn't look past this guy. You know this, Chael. I mean, Romero is so tough. I'm curious to see if he, you know, was lacking motivation going into this fight. It's a huge fight for him.
$185 for Mr. Tavares.
I certainly hope Tavares took this fight serious, because Romero, since coming into MMA, has done nothing. He may be a wrestler, but he's done nothing but knock his opponents out.
Romero, also the oldest fighter on the card. End of April, he's going to be 37 years old. He's been through a lot, including very serious neck surgery he had a couple of years ago.
Here we go.
CERRONE versus BARBOZA.
Guys, if you ask me, Edson Barboza is now training with one of the best and maybe underrated teams in MMA. Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes. He actually brought in, a lot of people don't know this, Anthony Njokuani to help him train for this fight. He beat Anthony Njokuani at UFC 128 with a KO or TKO or submission stemming from kicks tomorrow night, guys. That will set a new UFC record for finishes via kicks of any kind with 4. So look out for that from Edson Barboza.
156. 156 for Mr. Barboza. And his opponent, Donald Cowboy Cerrone.
You know, Cowboy's such a colorful fighter, and he was actually quoted just a few weeks ago saying, "I know absolutely nothing about Edson Barboza. Haven't watched 1 second of film. Don't care, doesn't matter, it's all about me." And I know Cowboy's tried to train him for years, and I absolutely believe him. He will not watch an ounce of film. However, those people you see standing around him and his coaches have studied Barboza extensively. You can count on that. The question is, and Cowboy admits it himself, if the Cowboy shows up mentally.
Now, Helwani, I'm going to raise you a kick. Cowboy Cerrone landed 131 kicks at UFC 49. Correct that. 49 kicks at UFC 131. Most ever in a 3-round fight.
Vancouver, BC, baby.
Next fight takes place in the women's bantamweight division. Miesha Tate versus Liz Carmouche.
Wow, you listen to the reception from the crowd that these ladies just got. Somebody wants to see these girls fight. Look, Liz Carmouche is the only fighter to legitimately put Ronda Rousey in jeopardy. She's a former #1 contender. She's training out of San Diego. I don't love her training environment, guys. I think that she needs to make a couple of changes if I'm going to be a little bit critical, but this girl is coming off of a loss to Alexis Davis. She needs to make some changes. She's got the skill sets, and let's see if she's made the adjustments.
Very active fighter. First woman ever to fight 4 times in the UFC. The only one on the roster. She lives a Spartan lifestyle, and it shows in her physique.
$135 for Liz Carmouche. And her opponent, Miesha Tate.
Quick side note, I'm very jealous of those socks that Liz Carmouche was rocking. They're amazing. Now, Miesha Tate, guys, of course, she's coming off her 2nd loss to Ronda Rousey. The first time she lost to her, she wanted to take some time off, thought she needed to take a break from MMA. This time around, she wanted to get right back in there, asked the UFC for a fight right away. And of course, this is a whole different set of circumstances. With Ronda, there's bad blood, there's trash talking, nothing but respect between these two. Speaking of which, I'm going to go talk to them and other fighters down below.
Good
See you
job,
guys.
135.5 for Miesha Tate. Women's bantamweight action, ladies and gentlemen. Liz Carmouche and Miesha Tate. Take a closer look at the 2 men involved in the main event of the evening.
The unknown is what's scary. People don't understand what they're getting in the cage with until the fight's over. You don't know what I'm gonna hit you with. You don't know what's coming.
Travis Browne is a tall, long, rangy heavyweight who has outstanding striking.
Travis Browne finishes Gabriel Gonzaga. He's hurt. That's it. Travis Browne has done it.
But in front of him stands one of the greatest Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists to ever fight in mixed martial arts, Fabricio Werdum.
He's down it. He's down it. Losing for the first time.
I'm very confident with my training. My condition is very good too. I just won the show. I'm waiting for the title shot.
Oh, big Either one of these fighters, if they win, they will be the #1 contender and they will next fight for the title against Cain Velasquez.
Werdum is not seeing anything close to me. For most of my fights, I don't need judges.
I see the big fight. Belt is my big goal.
It's dog-eat-dog world, and he's just in my way.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, the main event of the evening. Introducing Travis Browne.
You know, it's interesting, when you talk about sacrifices for a fight, Travis Browne's been away from his sons for 2 whole months. Absolutely incredible. Get this, he's not only coming off 3 first-round finishes in the heavyweight division, his average fight time is just over 5 minutes. That's his average fight time. So, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night, don't blink.
And he's a different fighter between the ears. Such a different guy than he was just a few years ago.
And it's interesting, he's actually never been taken down in the UFC.
From Mr. Browne. And his opponent, Fabricio Werdum.
Guys, this is actually Werdum's second run through the UFC, and here he is 1 fight away from fighting for 12 pounds of gold. Now, in his first run, he left when he was upset. He was knocked out by a vicious uppercut from a completely unknown young Brazilian fighter under the name of Junior Dos Santos. He goes over to Strikeforce, he submits Fedor Emelianenko, he comes back to the UFC in a match against Roy Nelson. He is one of only 2 men to ever outstrike Big Country.
Stand on it straight.
$232.5 from Mr. Werdum.
Wow, that's light, guys. That's a lot lighter than I thought he would be.
He looks fantastic after a long layoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, Travis Browne and Fabricio Werdum. We will see you all tomorrow night. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Joe. And tomorrow night, as Joe was saying, we have a huge night from